The dusty savanna lay still under the rising sun, a lonely field where silence felt heavy. In the center of the clearing, a lifeless shape lay stretched across the cracked earth. Flies buzzed lazily, circling as though nature had already claimed what was left. Villagers stood at a distance, whispering, convinced they had found a carcass left from the night before. Then, the world seemed to pause, a faint twitch, the slow, deliberate flutter of one eyelid. Gasps rippled through the crowd as they stumbled backward. This wasn't over. This animal was still alive. Dust rose as people ran, shouting for buckets, shouting for rope, shouting for help. Somewhere a child cried out, "If you were there, standing among them, would you have run toward it or turned away?" This was a village that lived by its animals. Goats, cattle, and oxen were wealth and survival itself. Fields stretched endlessly in every direction, broken only by the smoke from cooking fires rising into the warm air. Children chased each other barefoot, unaware that life itself was about to demand something of them. The heat was relentless, burning through the soil after weeks without rain. This cow had been missing for 2 days, assumed gone forever, maybe dragged off by predators. Now she lay before them, sunken and still, her hide stretched thin across bone. An old farmer was the first to see her. A young boy was the first to see her blink. The village doctor was called, arriving with a satchel of herbs and a face that betrayed little hope. Crows circled above, their calls cutting through the silence as if to remind everyone how fragile this moment was. The old man crouched and placed his hand on the cow's neck. He felt something faint but unmistakable, a pulse, and nearly fell to his knees. Her breathing was barely visible, each movement of her rib cage like the slow ticking of a clock running out of time. Flies swarmed her open wounds, black dots against pale skin, proof she had been here for hours fighting through the night. The heat had pulled every drop of moisture from her body. Her mouth was cracked, tongue dry and still. The smell of blood carried on the wind, and already the village dogs were gathering at the edge of the field, their ears pricked and teeth showing. If they didn't act now, she wouldn't survive another hour. And even if she did, the predators would come before the sunset. No one had ever seen a creature cling to life like this, so close to the end, and yet still blinking. The scramble to save her was chaotic. Buckets were brought from the well, cloths soaked and pressed against her lips. Someone shouted for shade, another for rope. The cow's eyes followed them, weak but aware, as though she understood they were fighting for her. Every blink felt like a plea. The ground beneath her was hot enough to burn, the sun now climbing mercilessly higher. They knew they had to get her to cover, but she was too weak to move on her own. Children waved branches to keep flies from her wounds while the adults argued in tense whispers about what to do. Time was slipping through their fingers. Move her too roughly and they could kill her. Leave her where she was and the heat would finish the job. The decision was made. Ropes were tied carefully around her midsection, men gripping them with white knuckles, women holding buckets of water to keep her cool. A single weak moan escaped her throat, the first sound she had made. Someone murmured under their breath that she was fighting to stay alive. Mud formed where water soaked into the dry soil. On the first pull, her head fell limply. Her breathing slowed, so faint they could barely see it. For a moment, everyone froze. Was this it? Had they waited too long? The threat was closing in from every direction. A distant howl echoed over the plains, and shadows moved on the horizon. Wild dogs. 2 young men armed themselves with sticks and ran to chase them off, shouting to make themselves big. But they knew the dogs would return, hungrier next time. The cow's eyes rolled back, and she stopped blinking altogether. Panic spread. A few villagers whispered about leaving her behind, fearful that she would die and bring more danger to them all. The doctor knelt beside her, felt for life, then looked up with grim resolve. "Her chances are slim," he said, "but we must try." Hours later, sweat-covered and exhausted, they finally pulled her beneath the lone tree that offered shade. A breeze stirred the air, carrying with it a faint breath of relief. Someone mixed sugar into water and dripped it on her tongue. Minutes passed. At last her tongue twitched. She swallowed. Murmurs rippled through the group. The cow blinked again, this time with strength, as though she was answering them. Hope returned like a spark catching dry grass. They would stay with her through the night, take turns guarding against predators, take turns bringing water. The fight wasn't over. The night fell hard and black, the kind of darkness that made every sound feel close and dangerous. Lanterns cast circles of light where the villagers sat, faces drawn but determined. The sound of jackals and hyenas began creeping in from the darkness. Their glowing eyes hovered at the edge of torchlight. The villagers banged pots, shouted, clapped, anything to keep the predators from coming closer. Then the cow moved, her head lifted, her front legs pushed against the ground. A hush fell as if the whole world held its breath. She rocked forward once, twice, then with a groan that sounded like defiance, she stood. The villagers surged forward to steady her as she swayed, nearly falling. When she finally balanced on her feet, someone laughed, someone else cried. Under the moonlight, she took her first step. When the dawn came, it painted the field gold. The cow was still standing, drinking from a bucket. The villagers, exhausted from the long vigil, smiled through. Cracked lips. The doctor ran his hands along her sides, checking her breathing, and finally nodded. She will live. Around them lay the evidence of the night's battle. Trampled grass, ropes, buckets, footprints in the dirt. Slowly she began walking toward the path back to her pen, her steps more sure with every moment. Children ran beside her, cheering. They say life can change in the blink of an eye. For this village, it did. Literally. What had begun as another ordinary morning turned into a night they would never forget. The villagers spoke quietly about how close they had been to losing her, how close they had been to walking away. Compassion, not fear, had kept them there. Would you have stayed through the night knowing the predators were waiting in the dark? Or would you have turned back, leaving fate to decide? Sometimes it only takes a single blink to remind us how much a life is worth and how far we are willing to go to save it. Her recovery was slow, but every day brought a new sign of life. By the second morning, she could lower her head to graze. The grass was sparse, dry from the heat, but she nibbled as though every blade was a victory. The children stayed near her pen, bringing handfuls of green shoots they found by the watering hole. They named her Shani, meaning miracle in their language, and whispered it like a secret every time they saw her blink. Each sound she made now, every snort or low bellow, felt like proof that their effort had not been in vain. The old farmer who had found her became her keeper. He rose before dawn to mix water with crushed grain and coax her to eat. The first time she finished a full drink, he smiled in a way no one had seen in years. Some said it was because he had once lost a cow the same way, and saving this one gave him a kind of peace. When he walked her to the field for the first time, his hand rested gently on her neck, as though she might disappear if he let go. The danger hadn't vanished. The smell of blood lingered in the air for days, attracting hyenas at night. The villagers built a temporary enclosure near the houses, driving in tall wooden stakes and tying thorn branches around the perimeter. When the hyenas came, their eerie whoops piercing the night, they found a wall of firelight and voices waiting for them. The cow stood quietly, no longer trembling, as if she knew she was safe. Weeks passed and her ribs, once sharp against her skin, began to smooth under new muscle. Her wounds scabbed over, then healed, leaving pale scars across her flank like battle marks. She could now stand without help and walk across the field. The first time she broke into a slow, awkward trot, the villagers clapped and cheered as though she had returned from the dead a second time. Her survival became a story the village told to visitors, each person remembering a different detail. The boy who saw her blink said it was a sign from the spirits. The doctor called it the rarest recovery he had ever witnessed. The women who stayed awake through the night spoke of hearing the sound of her breathing and feeling it grow stronger with each passing hour. It became a kind of legend, the night when the whole village fought side by side against death itself. The bond between Shani and the children deepened. They would run to her as soon as their chores were done, brushing her coat with branches and feeding her by hand. She followed them now, not just out of habit, but as though she trusted them completely. When one of the boys tripped and fell in the dust, she lowered her head and nudged him gently until he stood again. It was the kind of moment that made the adults pause and whisper that she remembered what they had done for her. Life in the village began to change in small ways. They built a shaded water trough near the edge of the field so no animal would have to suffer from thirst again. They began keeping watch at night in shifts, not just for Shawnee, but for the rest of their herd. What started as an emergency effort became a practice of care that strengthened the whole community. As the rains finally came, the land turned green again. Shawnee stood at the edge of the field, rain running off her back, and let out a long, deep sound that echoed through the village. To those who had been there that night, it felt like a thank you. Some of them swore her eyes were different now, not just alive, but bright, as though she had carried death on her back and come back stronger for it. Months later, she gave birth to a calf. The villagers gathered again, but this time there was no panic, no fear, only celebration. They said the calf was the final sign that she had truly beaten death. The children took turns naming it until they agreed on one. Tumani, Hope. Every time they looked at her and her calf standing side by side, they remembered that one blink in the field that had changed everything. The story became one they told their visitors, their children, and even themselves on hard days. A reminder that life can return even when it seems impossible. Some say that on quiet evenings, when the sun is low and the field glows gold, Shawnee stands at the same spot where she was found and stares out across the grass. Perhaps she remembers the sound of the villagers running to save her. Perhaps she simply enjoys the warmth on her back, knowing that she was given a second chance. The rescue of Shawnee began to ripple far beyond the village. Word traveled to neighboring settlements, and soon visitors came to see the cow that had returned from the edge of death. They brought offerings of grain, water, and even charms to hang near her pen, believing she brought good fortune. The old farmer would smile quietly as he led them to see her, proud but humbled by how her survival had become a symbol of resilience. One evening, a traveling elder from another village told a story around the fire. He spoke of a time when animals were considered messengers, when a blink or a cry from a creature could be a sign to the whole community. The villagers listened intently, some nodding as though understanding for the first time why they had felt compelled to fight so hard for Shawnee's life. It was not just about saving a cow, it was about answering a call they had all heard in their hearts. As time passed, the bond between Shawnee and the old farmer grew unshakable. He began talking to her as he worked, sharing stories of the fields, of his family, of the dry years and the good ones. Some evenings when the sun was setting, he would sit quietly by her side as if simply being near her brought him peace. Others noticed this change in him. His once stern face softened, his laugh returned, and he began to teach the children the ways of caring for animals, as if passing down the wisdom that had saved her. One night, months after her recovery, a powerful storm rolled across the savannah. Thunder shook the sky and rain hammered the earth. The herd panicked, breaking through part of the enclosure, scattering into the dark. The villagers lit torches and spread out, calling to one another over the wind. When they finally found the herd huddled under a tree, Shawnee was there, calm and still, her calf beside her. It was as if she had led them all to safety. The villagers returned in the rain, their fear replaced with a deep respect for the animal they had once saved. The story of Shawnee's survival became part of the village's identity. During festivals, they spoke of her as a living reminder of the power of unity. Children born after that night grew up hearing about the blink that stopped everyone cold. For them, it was a lesson that life should never be given up on too soon, that compassion was as important as strength. And when Shawnee stood in the field, strong and unbroken, the people saw not just a cow, but a promise that even in the harshest of seasons, there could still be hope.